Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond Cancer series. My name is Gail, aka Sunshine, and today I'm going to be talking to 3 melanoma survivors. First, just want to do a brief introduction to Epic Experience, in case you are not familiar. Epic was started in 2012 by Nancy Farrow after her son was diagnosed with testicular cancer and then kind of had a hard time getting his life back on track. And the goal, usually in a non-COVID world, the flagship program is a week-long camp in the beautiful Colorado Rockies, both summer and winter. We've had to pivot a little bit, and now we have virtual camps. We have other virtual programs going on, and so we've tried different ways to reach out to the cancer community. So one of the things we've been doing more often is this series, the Beyond Cancer series, talking about various topics related to living beyond cancer. We've talked to specialists, oncologists, fertility experts. If you've missed any of them, they're available on our YouTube channel, so you can go ahead and check those out. So today, episode 27, we're going to be talking to 3 melanoma survivors. Kristin, Jordan, and Tiffany are going to be joining us today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much. Good to see you. And we are spread out all over the U.S. We have some West Coast people, we have some Colorado people, and we have someone from Connecticut, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to start off. I'm going to let each of you kind of introduce yourself, where you live, your camp name, when you went to camp, and if you feel like it, one fun fact about you. So Jordan, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. Hello, my name's Jordan Adams. I live out in Sacramento, California, and was diagnosed with ocular melanoma in 2016. My camp name was Specs, and I went to camp in the summer of 2017. And fun fact about me, I love board games and will take all comers.
Awesome. Kristin.
Hi, I'm Kristin McJunkins. I live in Connecticut, and I was diagnosed with melanoma in 2008. I haven't physically been to camp. I participated in virtual camp just last week.
Awesome.
So here I am. So I don't have a camp name yet. And fun fact about me, I've been skydiving 3 times.
Oh, awesome. Tiffany.
Hi, guys. My name's Tiffany Wolf. I am from Denver, Colorado. I went to camp in the summer of 2014. I was diagnosed with melanoma originally in 2003, and it returned in 2011. So I've been through the gamut. Fun fact. Oh, I guess you guys might want to know why my camp name is Gold Digger.
Yes.
So my husband is a mining engineer, and he works in the gold mines in Nevada. That's where we lived for the first several years before we moved home to be closer to family. So that's my funny fact.
So you are literally a gold digger, not a
I married the gold digger.
Married the gold digger. I love it.
Right.
Well,
that's right.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Today, we've been talking to different cancer survivors with different types of cancer. Today, we're focusing on melanoma, and we're going to dive right in. So what we want to talk about first, and I'm going to let you guys kind of jump in. I won't call on you like school or whatever, but I'm going to let you jump on in. So we wanted to start with kind of diagnosis. What were the symptoms leading up to it? When were you diagnosed? Grade, all that kind of stuff. If you want to incorporate treatment, and I know Tiffany, it sounds like you've had 2 different diagnoses. So if you want to talk about both, just kind of give us the cancer story. We'll start there. Anyone?
I'll go first.
Sure.
So in 2008, so I didn't grow up in Connecticut. I had been living here less than 2 years. I had been in Pennsylvania for a long time, and then Baltimore, though I grew up in Rhode Island. So I was kind of doing the rounds around the Northeast. And when I moved back, I was in my late 30s, and the plan was to try to start having kids. And so I was actually going through the process of insemination, and had noticed a spot on my leg. And my mom had basal cell skin cancers over the years growing up by the beach. We were always at the beach. And so I just kind of thought it was that. So I went to the doctor and just to have the mole checked because I thought it was changing color a little bit. And I was telling her my whole story and the whole, that I was trying to have a baby and everything. And so she said, well, we'll just, take a look at it. Well, unbeknownst to me, she actually put a rush on it and called me within a few days. And it was a stage 3A. And so, and Tiffany would know this, but back then there really were no treatments, so surgery was kind of your best hope. And so had to stop the whole having a baby process.
Yeah.
And so I had one surgery and had the sentinel node biopsy to see if it had gone to the lymph nodes, and it had gone to it was in my thigh, so it had gone to some in my groin. So I had to have another surgery and have some removed. And then I actually ended up in the hospital a few weeks after that because I had a massive infection. And then once all of that was done, I started interferon. And because I didn't qualify for any clinical trials or anything like that. And so then I spent 11 months on interferon.
And I'm not familiar with that. Is that a chemo, like a drip chemo?
It's an immunotherapy. So a lot of melanomas didn't get chemotherapy in the traditional sense. And so unless you qualified for a clinical trial, which was usually one of the later stages, or if it had metastasized, I was fortunate that they did get everything within the surgery. And really the interferon was all they had. And the oncologist had said, he said it's less than 10% effective. He said we just don't have anything else. And so it was really just kind of hoping that it didn't come back. And and I was fortunate. And then I've had some squamous cells and basal cells taken off over the years, but it was very deep, and it had like if a scar was spread out, it probably would have been about a foot long. But more of a jagged scar. So, and yeah.
And that was 2011. So since then,
that was 2008.
That was 2008.
Yeah. And so I, was fortunate that, I did my scans every year for about 5 years. And then ironically, they didn't want to do too many scans, but because they were saying the radiation from the scans were causing cancer. So, but I've got a great dermatologist. And so I've been, for probably 10 years, I went every 3 months religiously. And, and now I go about 4 to 6 months, but that's just started the last couple of years. And with the squamous cells, some of those I've had to have the Mohs surgery. And so, have different scars in different places, and you feel like a cushion after a while.
Wow. Thank you. Other of you?
Oh, well, I'll follow up on that because it's interesting that you said you were trying to get pregnant when you found your melanoma. Mine came back between pregnancies. I actually miscarried, and then we found that it had metastasized, and then I, wasn't supposed to get pregnant, but yeah, that happened. So I have a beautiful 9-year-old now. But my original story, I was 22 years old. I had a mole on my leg, and it wasn't that big. It was raised, and I would cut it when I would shave my legs. And so I got sick and tired of cutting it. And I told the dermatologist at the end of the summer, I said, why don't you cut this off before I do? And he said, sure, no problem. We'll send it in just to be safe. Well, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I got the call that it was a stage 2 melanoma on my leg. And so at that time, so that was 2003 when that happened. We did the white excision with the sentinel node biopsy. At that time, my lymph nodes were clear. So that was kind of the end of my treatment at that time. And it was just skin checks every 6 months, stay on top of it. But then it came back and I found a tumor. It was kind of in my axilla armpit area back here. It was a real weird spot. And I'm a physical therapist, so I work with my hands all day long. And so when I found this node, it didn't feel like it should. And so I knew there was something going on. And so I went to the doc and they said, oh, it's no big deal. We'll just cut it out. We'll test it to be safe. Well, lo and behold, oh boy, have I heard that before. That turned out to be a metastasis in my lymph nodes there. And so I went through, I think it took them 4 attempts to finally get clear margins in that area. So I can appreciate the first line of defense for melanoma is to cut, and I have more scars than I can even attempt to count. But after they did get it all, and so that was, the plan was that to be the end of treatment at that time. But I was given the instructions by my oncologist to not get pregnant for 5 years. So, well, we lived in the middle of nowhere, Nevada at the time, and it took time to get to an OB. Well, God had a different plan, and we got pregnant in the span it took for me to get to the OB. And so I went through her pregnancy, and the melanoma came back while I was pregnant with her. And I had, probably a dozen subcutaneous tumors that were real close to the surface. You could palpate them. And my docs, I mean, they understand my knowledge in anatomy and, you know, all of that stuff. So they were on board to kind of do what they could and let me stay, you know, pregnant as long as possible. And then at 37 weeks, we had Miss Bridget, who is now, she can be 9 this month. And after we had her, I started, what was it? Ipilimumab, which is also known as Yervoy. I did that for 13 weeks. And then I did a trial of radiation on one tumor. And then we kind of waited for a while to get me on a clinical trial, and then came around. It's like, okay, well, let's put you back on the Yervoy for another cycle while we're waiting. And so we did that for another 13 weeks. And as my oncologist said, that he had my melanoma stable. It wasn't worsening, but it wasn't getting better. And so finally, they got me on a clinical trial with Merck with their Keytruda, which is now called Keytruda. It wasn't that when I was on it. And I started that, and I did that for about 1.5 years before I couldn't take the side effects anymore. And I had clear scans for about 4 or 5 months, I think. By the time I was like, okay, I'm done. I'll call you when I need you. So and I've been clean since then.
So was that also an immunotherapy? So is that I'm getting the sense that's kind of
that's the treatment for melanoma
protocol. Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that.
And it was about the research time that it came out, because I remember I got diagnosed and there was nothing, and then it was that 3-4 years later where all of a sudden a few things were coming, thank goodness, because the side effects were brutal for people, because I knew so many people on them.
Brutal. It was rough. So.
Wow. I'm going to come back to that, but Jordan, I want to hear your story first.
So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I have the rare, kind of stepbrother to skin melanoma. I was diagnosed with eye cancer or ocular melanoma in 2016. Pretty rare, not a very common cancer. I've actually never met another eye cancer survivor in person. I've talked to 1 or 2 over the phone, but you don't see them too often. So I found my cancer. So I was 26 when I was diagnosed, and late in 2015, I was 25 and had just been given glasses for the first time, and I had updated my prescription and was just sitting at home playing video games and kind of doing a hold one eye closed, check this eye's prescription, hold this eye closed, check the other eye's prescription. And I just kind of noticed that in the bottom right quadrant, if you will, of my right eye's vision, there was this kind of a black hazy fog that kind of sat there. And I'm pretty active, so I just kind of assumed I took a spill playing ultimate frisbee or basketball or something. And, I didn't really think too much of it, just kind of made a note, right?
Right.
And a couple of months later, after nothing had gone away, I, went to my ophthalmologist, and, they shipped me off to any number of specialists. I think I saw 2 or 3 specialists before anyone figured out what was going on. And they finally injected me with some dye and took some high caliber photos of my inner eye. And that's when they saw a mass, which, a biopsy and a whirlwind of scans and appointments later, they did confirm was a malignancy. So about 8 weeks after they found the tumor, kind of similar to what Kristin was saying, there isn't really a standard of treatment for ocular melanoma. It's a good decade or so behind the skin melanoma treatments at this point. And so there wasn't really a chemo they could give me. I suppose I should mention that there was no metastasis, and, I'm good so far.
Good.
But so what the 2 options were to try and fry it with a experimental proton beam therapy, which is a great option for a lot of people, but because I could actually see the tumor, that's what that haze was that I was mentioning. I could actually see the tumor inside my eye. So that was great because it let me know it was there. But the other edge of that sword was that the only reason I could see it was because it was sitting almost on, like, very close to on top of my optic nerve, which is the nerve that sends signals from your eye to your brain. So in order to get margins around my tumor with the proton beam therapy, they would essentially fry my optic nerve, and I would be blind in that eye anyway. So the other treatment was to just pluck the eye.
Yeah,
and I opted for that.
Wow.
A little tempting to keep the eye, but what have you done for me lately? So they removed my eye about 2 months after they found the tumor. And I was fitted with a prosthetic about a couple months later. So you can probably see it now. This one's a fake one. So pretty good. Most people can't tell. But yeah, I've been just been doing scans ever since. I get scanned. The first 3 months was the first year was every 3 months. And now I get scanned every 6 months. So far, so good.
So Jordan, you ended up doing no treatment then. I mean, obviously removing your eyes is huge treatment in that sense, but you didn't have to take a therapy type thing.
Yeah, it's not that they didn't want to, it's that the FDA has not given anything the green light. So they wanted to give me chemo, but there isn't a chemo that's been proven to have efficacy. So
why go through that? Yeah. So let's talk side effects. Jordan, you do have side effects just from only having one eye, and both of you have indicated that the side effects were harsh. What kind of side effects did you have? How did they affect your day-to-day living then and even now? How do they affect you?
I'll go first if you want on this one.
Sure.
So because I was on a clinical trial, the way they did the study, they had 3 arms to the study. It was the standard of care, which was the, I can't remember the name of it, but, and then it was 2 doses of the study drug, high dose, low dose, but you didn't know what you were on. And so I would venture to guess that I was on the high dose because the difference was, it was either 2 kilograms per, 2 milliliters per kilogram, or it was 10. And I have so there's a little difference. But with immunotherapy, the idea behind it is that it takes the brakes off of your immune system, and so that your own immune system goes to attack the cancer.
Okay.
And so with that, the side effects are very autoimmune-like. And so a lot of GI issue, joint pain, swelling, things of that nature. And for me, the fatigue hit me within the first week of treatment. I had to quit work within that first week. And infusions were every 3 weeks. And it was just, there wasn't a improvement and then, go to the next one and then it was just like, And so those were the big reasons that I finally gave up on the treatment a year and a half later. And to this day, I still have joint issues, gut issues. I've worked with some really great GI docs and rheumatologists and stuff, but because the drug is so new and there aren't that many people that have been on it and been survivors for long periods, like there's no research yet to see what the side effects are, what possible follow-up treatments could be. So
wow. Yeah, the side effects are often as bad as especially because they're ongoing for you, right? I mean, you're still having to find ways
totally.
to
and the worst part, and I told my oncologist this, I said, I was never sick a day in my life when I just had melanoma.
Isn't that funny?
I was so sick as soon as I started treatment.
And since then, have you been more prone to getting sick?
And actually, no, I'm actually don't typically get too sick. So who knows, maybe my immune system is still, revved up.
Right. Kristin, how about you?
Well, so thankfully my treatment protocol is probably never given anymore, but, so when I had it, I had to have a port put in and so for the first month I had to go 5 days a week to have the interferon. And basically the side effects are, you feel like you have the flu. So I basically felt like I had the flu for a year. And the first few days, I mean, it's the fevers, the shakes, the nausea, and there's not much you can do but take as much Tylenol as possible. And then I had to stop halfway through that month because one of the dangers is your white blood count drops. And so that happened to me. So it dropped significantly. And so I had to stop for a few days and then start up again. And then, the whole fever thing started again. So then once that first month was over, I had to give myself shots at home 3 days a week. And, at first they suggested, well, give it at night and then you kind of sleep through the effects. But that didn't happen for me. I was really agitated and just like restless and uncomfortable. And I was still working. So I would actually give myself the shot in the morning and go to work and then basically come home and collapse. And, and for the weekends, I would just, sleep all weekend. I mean, the oncologist, he said a lot of people don't tolerate it well. He said, if we can get 6-8 months, he said, I'll consider that lucky. I actually made it 11. But I had the problem with my white blood count dropping a few times, so I had to stop. And so I got to like the third time that happening, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do that again. But
I can imagine. So, do you have any lingering other things that you're still dealing with today?
I have lymphedema in my leg, and so I've definitely that hasn't gone away. And, so it's like, I can notice it. I mean, if somebody was looking at me, but I don't wear shorts anymore, like, so no one can really tell that it's more swollen in the other leg. That's really thankfully the only thing that I had.
Yeah. Well, I can relate to the lymphedema. I have it in my leg also. So we can talk lymphedema later. Jordan, how about you? What was it like adjusting to one eye?
It's pretty odd. After my surgery, I didn't realize that, and no one told me this, but I had a black eye for almost an entire year after they took my eye out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I've got a year's worth of pictures with this. Looks like I just got blocked in the face. So that was a fun year's worth of like, no, I didn't get punched. I just almost died.
You should see the other guy. Yeah, right.
But the big one, I think it surprises a lot of people that you're really. I think a lot of people imagine that like you only see things on like the one side. Your vision just cuts off where your nose is, which isn't really true. The big difference is in the major one is depth perception. Because if you need 2 points of reference, if you hold your finger out in front of you and close one eye and close the other, they shift positions a little bit. And that shift in positions, your brain is really good at taking that little subtle shift. That tells your brain how far away an object is. So when you only have one point of reference, I am now notoriously bad at determining, how far away I am from something without the benefit of something like, and there are a lot of little things that are out there in the world that can help, like a shadow, for example, can be really helpful. So there are a lot of things you can kind of learn to pay attention to help, bridge the gap, so to speak. But that's the big one, is the lack of depth perception. I have to be pretty careful driving a car. I am, not ever going to be a tennis champion. But that's the major difference is the depth perception. Your field of vision really only shrinks 20% or so. Your blind spot just gets really big on the one side. So you can sneak up on me from my right side if you come from like the back right.
I'll remember that.
Yeah, right, sure. I shouldn't be telling you that, Gail. But yeah, that's probably was the biggest adjustment for me.
Wow. If you are watching, we have 3 melanoma survivors here today. And I think I forgot to mention this, but if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the comments. And I will get to them. And I think there was a few. Let me look at this. We had one person who said they just had their first full year of no treatment. And he or she sees Doc Robinson this Friday for a checkup. Somebody appreciates your sense of humor, Specs. That would be fatty. We have someone who said that they're 10 years in remission and their body is destroyed from the chemotherapy. So someone who did have chemotherapy, didn't get support, trying to turn his life around, and now believes in himself again. It's been 14 years of fighting. Keep fighting. Andy, thank you for joining us, and keep it up. One thing I want to ask you guys, wait, here's another one, didn't keep spell. One thing I want to ask you guys is about first reactions when you heard, like, what went through your head? What were you thinking? What happened? Yeah, what was it like finding out, you have cancer?
I'll go for this one because I've got 2 separate, experiences. Right. So the first one, because I was young, I was 22, I was in grad school, I was otherwise healthy. And in my mind, when the doc called and he said, hey, by the way, that mole we took off, it's melanoma. I was like, okay, I don't have time for this. What do we need to do?
Right.
So, and, because it was an easy fix at that time, it was like one and done, and then just stick with your checkups. Cool. But when it came back and I was older, I was married, I had 1 daughter already, and, that puts it in a whole other perspective of, holy crap, this is stage 4. And the survival rates for stage 4 melanoma aren't that great. Yeah. And I was hitting that point where new drugs were just starting to kind of come out. And so it was really scary. And I'm lucky that I have a wonderful support system between my husband, my parents, his parents. We moved back to Colorado to be closer to all of them. But there was a distinct difference between original and metastases. It was a completely different experience.
Interesting. How about either of you?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I was going through the insemination process, and my doctor actually called me to tell me and was apologizing that she called, but she knew that I was supposed to go in to the doctor that week, and she needed to make sure I didn't. And honestly, for the first 2 months as I was going through everything, I don't know whether I was more upset about not being able to have a child or having advanced cancer. I really couldn't separate it. And so when I was going through treatment, I held on hope that it could potentially still happen, but I was older, and by the time I finished treatment, I was 40, and like Tiffany said, and so I was already in an advanced stage to be trying to do that. And
Yeah.
I went to like 2 or 3 different doctors, and they said you should wait at least 2 or 3 years. And, because how one of my doctors explained it, he said, being pregnant doesn't cause cancer or cause melanoma, but because your body's in a suppressed state, he said it grows, and it grows faster, and we can't detect it. And so, I was single, and, and again, I had just moved up here. I didn't know a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I made the difficult decision, when I was in my like 43 or so, to just not go forward, with that. And, it definitely was, a hard decision, but, as Tiffany said, like your life changes. Like I was fine being a single parent when I didn't have cancer, but then, to have cancer really just put everything in a different perspective.
Yeah, it does shake things up, doesn't it? In every imaginable way. That would be shocking if you're in the middle. Here you are in the middle of planning for something so positive and wonderful, and then you get this devastating news. Jordan, how about you?
Oh, I didn't handle it very gracefully, frankly. I think at the time when I was diagnosed, I had never really had a major health problem before. And I think the first thing that crossed my mind was like, oh no, I'm going to be that person in everyone's life that just kind of like gets that weird illness and falls over dead in a year. And I think a part of that was because just some weird traits of my tumor made them initially suspect that it was a secondary tumor. So the first couple of months of my treatment was actually a little bit of a, well, where's the original tumor? And there didn't end up being one. It just ended up being, the placement in my eye and whatever. It's a weird rare cancer, made them. So in an abundance of caution, their initial diagnosis was that it was secondary, which would imply that it's metastasized already, which, it's, as Gold Digger touched on, it doesn't usually make for a very good prognosis rate. So it was a little bit of a plunge for me right off the bat. In retrospect, I really wish those doctors had kind of had been a little more gun shy, because at the end of the day, it ended up being that it was the primary tumor, and my the genetic markers and whatnot were never great. The prognosis on eye cancer is around 50%, in a general sense, but for the genetics of mine in particular ended up being quite a bit more favorable. So for me, the initial plunge was really dark and really, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Most people don't make it 7 months, especially with it being a secondary tumor, and it sort of eased off as we learned more. It was kind of a weird, the first news was the worst and didn't end up being true. And then as time wore on, the news kind of got better. So for me, that initial dive was really maybe some of the hardest, at least before, getting back to normal life is a struggle for many of us too. But that it was a little bit of a plunge is maybe the best word I can use. You really lean on the people who are around you in your life. My mom, who lives a couple states away, came and lived with me for 3 months while I was going through everything. And, that's, I don't, it's little stuff like that that, kind of carried me through. So I'm so grateful for the people who had the time and energy to give to me at that time.
Yeah. And you mentioned, family members and things like that. I'm curious, how did you guys go about telling people, family, friends, extended, how did you handle it?
I waited 20, I'm very close to my mom, and she's since passed away, but I waited 24 hours because I'm her only child. And, and I was like, how do I tell my mom that her only kid is, really
has
sick?
Cancer. Right.
And I didn't, I was still new at work, relatively new. I told like my immediate boss and, my director, but I really didn't tell a lot of people at work. And it really was, more because not that I didn't think they were nice or wouldn't care, but, and I'm sure other people feel this way. Like I didn't know how to answer the "how are you doing" question, because every day it changed just so dramatically. And it was one thing when it was people that I knew very well, like my friends or my family, once I finally told them. But I couldn't tell a lot of people I didn't know well, because some days I was okay and other days I was a puddle. And it was years. And I remember when I actually got into some more advocacy work and was telling my story a little more, that I actually was kind of like, I should probably tell some of these people that I've worked with for a decade, and they were shocked. They didn't know, because I was still coming into work. But I just kind of stayed by myself. And you definitely learn the people in your life, and not that everybody was great, but some things people say just aren't helpful. And so you definitely find your small tribe who,
it's true,
and the best ones were the ones that would call and say, I have no idea what to say, but I just want to be on the phone and talk with you. And I was like, okay, great.
Yep, exactly.
I love that you said that, and I relate to that so deeply, that I just keep finding that there's so much of what people tell cancer patients that are really for them. It's not really for the cancer patient they're talking to. It's for them to feel like, oh, I've said something nice and contributed. And you really can, the people who have the wherewithal to try and say something for you rather than say something for their own, the sake of their own conscience, really do stick out in your mind. That really resonates with me.
Yeah, I remember how many people told me, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Right.
I can't stand that. And so I never say that to anybody. And it's, that was really hard. When my original diagnosis, it was pretty easy. I told my folks, I was like, hey, I got this. I got to go get this taken care of. And at the time, I was dating my husband before we got married. And he couldn't be there for my surgery, so he sent his mom to make sure that and so I had a really good support system. And then I have a lot of extended family, so I just left that to my parents. I said, just fill everybody else in, just let them know. And I kind of did the same thing when it came back, because it's too much to say the story over and over and over and over. But one thing that I found interesting, and I guess I kind of expected it, when I quit the trial, because the doctors didn't tell me it was time to be done. I told them I was done. I said, enough. I've had it. I got a lot of backlash from people saying, why are you doing this? You need to do this. What are you going to do? You have 2 children. I said, I was at that point where I had zero quality of life, and I would rather have whatever amount of quality I could have with my kids versus being a zombie and worthless for however long. So
absolutely.
And unless you've been there,
it's so true.
It's tough. It is tough. Yeah. Jordan, how did you tell people?
Well, I think I told some of my close friends and my parents at least right away. But I didn't really circulate the news much beyond those folks until probably after I had already had my treatment resolved. I had to call, I had to go on leave at work. And so, a short list of people knew, but it really wasn't until, my treatment was said and done and I had a prosthetic that I really felt like I wanted or had the capacity to really, just like Goldiger had mentioned that, you really get tired of telling the story over and over again. And, so the people who I knew were going to be more than just, a talking head, right away. And everyone else got to wait their turn until I was ready to deal with, what comes along with that. So,
yeah. I think we have a question here. Hold on, somebody was asking about adrenal glands. Oh, does anyone else have adrenal glands that no longer work as a result?
I would argue that mine are on the fritz because I've been told multiple times that I've had adrenal fatigue based on a lot of my symptoms that I still carry. So I can relate to that. I haven't had any specific testing for the adrenals, but based on my symptoms, I've been told that a few times. So
interesting. Kristin, have you?
No, not that I know of.
And then somebody else said that they never could find where theirs started, but it sounds like with each of you, it was clear where it started, and then if it
eventually
spread, eventually.
But even for general melanoma, because there are a few people in my support group, they never had a primary. And,
right.
So, like President Carter, he's had melanoma. Right. They never found his primary. So it definitely happens.
Is that common with melanoma? I don't think I'd heard that. I mean,
I don't think it's not necessarily common, but it happens. Can happen.
Not unheard of.
Yeah,
it's not unheard of.
Right.
Interesting. Let's see. We have another question here. Someone is asking, do you think cancer ends with remission?
Nope.
Boy, no hesitation there.
Nope. Sorry. I will forever have cancer. It's part of everything that happens to me. If I find a new lump, if I have a new pain, if anything, unfortunately, the first line of defense is, oh my gosh, is the cancer back? Yep. And then when you go to the doctors, it's, well, we better rule out that the cancer isn't back before we can go and address what might actually be going on. So even though I might be officially in remission, I will always have melanoma.
Right.
Well, and I think you said no evidence of disease, which is really what they say now. They don't, no one, and even with melanoma, they never said remission with me either. Right. It was because, and particularly with melanoma, it's so tricky. Like, I mean, you went several years, and again, I've known several people that, have gone 10 years and then it comes back. And so that's the thing with melanoma. It's sneaky.
Yeah, definitely. I am wondering if any of you have experienced survivor's guilt. If you either people, people who have the same kind of cancer, or being involved with EPIC, you meet people who unfortunately pass away. Have any of you struggled with that?
I think I kind of got off easy on that one, just because like I have talked to one person who's had my cancer over the phone and never met another one in person. So I have yet to really I haven't really ever had another eye cancer person pass away to mourn.
Yeah.
So not yet.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that's not a
in your future.
No, not so far for me.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kristin.
In a couple of different ways. So when I joined my support group about 3/4 of a way through my treatment, and so many of them were advanced. I went for a few months, and then every time I was going back, somebody wasn't there anymore because they had died. And I had to stop going because I was like, oh my gosh, I just, like, I'm ending my treatment, and but then I went back, and then a few years later, just in my personal life, 3 people very close to me that were all around my age, and married, had kids, had grandkids, had fiancés. They all developed cancer, different kinds, but very aggressive kinds, within a month, and they all died within a year. And I just felt horrible. I was like, why them and not me? I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. And it was a struggle. Like, I just felt awful.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm going to follow up with that. What coping mechanisms have you found, both specifically for survivor's guilt, but just in general? What things have you guys found that work when you take the plunge, like you said, when the times are dark? What have you guys found that works?
One thing that really worked for me, well, I'm a physical therapist, so I'm really active. But when I started the clinical trial and it knocked me on my butt, I didn't have the ability to ride my bike or go for a run. I couldn't do that. And so I had to find other things. And one thing for me that was really good was yoga and journaling. Those were the two that really kind of kept me some level of together. Because, you know, my poor husband, he only wants to hear so much of the crap I'm going through. So it was easier to write a lot of it down and just like verbal diarrhea, just get it out of the system and do it that way.
Yeah, definitely.
I at one point in my treatment went to University California, San Francisco, UCSF, and they had what at the time I thought was, I chafed at it a little bit, but in retrospect, it was absolutely clairvoyant that they have a policy that they tell all their cancer patients that they should go see a therapist who specializes in major, you know, cancer or other major life-changing illnesses. And when they told me that, you know, like I said, I chafed a little bit, but in retrospect, you know, when I was going through treatments, I very quickly developed the attitude is that I'm going to listen to these people trying to save my life. So, so I took them at their word, and I ended up working with a therapist who has that specialty for over a year. And that was, I mean, that was the first step to getting back to normal. So if, you know, that I think would be a major part of it for me. You know, work with somebody who's really good at helping people do exactly that, cope with what's going on in their life.
That's
I
awesome.
would second what Specs just said.
Yeah, that's awesome that they gave you that advice.
And again, I'm sure that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. When they told me
it would have me.
Time, I wasn't thrilled to hear it, but as soon as I gave it a chance, you know, I think it immediately began to show its value. And clairvoyant policy on their part and very sound advice.
My oncology nurse gave me the same advice, and I took her up on it, and, you know, walked in, and I literally just sobbed for the first session. I mean, I don't even think I said 5 words, but I completely agree. I mean, it just, and I think because you're like struggling with those emotions of dealing with your friends and family, and you want to keep a positive aspect, and, you know, and you have to be hopeful and you have to fight, but there are days where you just feel like hell. And, you know, and to be able to have this stranger in some ways just to talk to and, you know, and leave was, you know, very important. And then I also did the yoga. And then for me, after, you know, I lost, you know, those other people in my life, I actually got very involved in advocacy work and different cancer advocacy organizations, including the Melanoma Research Foundation. And because I just felt like I had to do something, you know, and, you know, if I'm going to be one of the lucky people that's still here, you know, to have a voice and advocate for research and, you know, and one of the blessings has been meeting people, you know, like all of you that, you know, are surviving, and, you know, it gives us hope. Yeah,
I would echo that in that, you know, I think that like in some senses, I feel like I needed to know how many of the things I was going through after my own cancer experience were just normal. You know, I needed to know, I needed someone else who had been through cancer to tell me that, like, oh yeah, I have major anxiety ahead of a scan too.
Oh God, scanxiety is such a thing.
Like there's a whole vocabulary of out there for cancer survivors. And like, I think that's a little bit not talked about enough, that how valuable kind of building connections with people who can really have empathy with you in a way that even your best intentioned friends and family can't, you know? And I really found, you know, that's one of the biggest ways that Epic really, you know, helped me. You know, I hadn't really had an opportunity to make those connections. And when I did, it was really powerful.
Specs, that was the same thing for me, because I went to my Epic camp when I was at the very end of my clinical trial. And I mean, I was awful. I was in a horrible place. I was so sick. And being up in the mountains and being on the river, it was amazing. And it was the first time I actually met and got to speak to other melanoma patients.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Was at my camp. So that was very helpful.
Yeah, that is powerful. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I'm going to say that again at the end, but you guys are awesome. People have been saying that. You guys rock. Thank you for sharing your stories. We do have a question. Do you guys ever feel like you're a burden to your family and friends?
I did when I was going through the clinical trial, for sure. I couldn't do anything. I could barely get from my bed to the couch and the couch to the bed. And I had an infant and a 3-year-old. I mean, talk about guilt. I felt like mommy guilt all the way. And so that was really hard. But again, luckily I have a really strong support system. So
yeah.
During treatment and maybe for a little while afterwards, I think it's hard not to feel like your sudden need of much more support than you've ever needed, isn't a drag on the people who are feeling that need for you. So it kind of diminished over time, and not in small part because of all those people, being willing to do what they did and, being happy to do it. Support system makes a huge difference, but thankfully it didn't linger.
Yeah.
I did for the first few months. So my cancer was on my left leg and I drove a standard car.
Oh,
so
gosh.
so getting to doctor's appointments wasn't happening for 2 months on my own. And, so my mom would come in from a couple hours away and, she was a teacher and luckily they were supportive and I could go stay with her, for about a month after one of my surgeries. Which was great, but I just felt bad. So when I bought a new car, I was like, okay, I'm getting a regular job.
Yeah, really. Just in case.
But I was like, really? The left leg? Come on.
Right. You guys all seem like you have a great sense of humor, which I think helps tremendously. I'm wondering if there are any positives that unexpected good things. Obviously, we know there's a lot of crap that comes along with cancer. But were there any unexpected good things that have come out of this whole experience for you guys?
I think prior to cancer and after cancer, just my list of priorities it's a whole different list.
Yep.
I feel like in many ways it taught me, all this crap that I stress out about on a day-to-day basis just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it really kind of sheds light on some of the stuff that really does. So that's maybe one of the best things it did for me was, I almost felt like I suddenly had permission to not care about a lot of things I had wasted a lot of time and energy stressing out about, and, had this ability, a little bit of clarity to, kind of focus up on the things that suddenly very clearly did matter.
I had, when I got my metastatic disease diagnosis, I was actually in my clinic working, and I got the call at lunchtime. It was awful. But one of my patients at the time, who was also a good friend, and she was a uterine cancer survivor, and she made the comment, and this stuck with me. She said, "I think everybody needs to wear the cancer goggles for a day, because you put everything into perspective of what really matters and what doesn't." And that is just too true. Family for me, that was huge. That was my priority. In the end, physical therapy, cool. People will live without physical therapy.
Yeah.
So, but I do think having gone through my cancer journey, I'm able to relate to a lot of my patients that are also either going through active treatment or are survivors themselves. I feel like I can relate more closely to them. So, yes.
I would echo what they both said. What I have often said is the extraneous BS just melted away.
Right.
And like it just, you know, and I feel that way in work and in life. And I don't get stressed. Like things that people get stressed about at work, I will often look at them like, really?
Yeah.
And you know, and talking about those goggles, I'm like, that's why, because maybe they haven't experienced, you know, something that big. And so yeah, if nothing else, it gives clarity.
Yeah. I'm curious if you guys could give advice to someone, like if you were able to talk to someone who was just diagnosed with melanoma. Is there one or two or whatever? Is there some kind of something you've learned, or maybe you wish you knew back then, that you would share with them as they start the journey, kind of as they're walking into the door that you've walked out of?
I think for anyone that starts to go through this journey, and I tell my patients this regardless of what their issue is that they're going through, is that we as patients need to be advocates for our own healthcare. And sometimes the first answer that you get isn't the right answer, and it's okay to go ask for someone else's opinion. I mean, we are consumers in our healthcare. We are able to go get multiple opinions, and I think that was very important to me, because I had a great experience with my oncologist, but when I ever had to see one or the other doctors in the office, not a good experience. So, you know, you are a consumer in your healthcare. You can ask for other opinions and ask all of the questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah.
I love that answer. And I was going to give one very similar in that even if you have the benefit of being surrounded by perfectly well-intentioned doctors, there are many elements of our healthcare that require our input to truly be effective. Somebody is really trying to help us. They need us to tell them what will help us the most. What our priorities are, what do we really need right now? You know, what are we willing to sacrifice for our treatment, and what aren't we? And that, I think a lot of people struggle to balance, listening to the people, like I mentioned earlier, listening to the people who are doing their best to save our lives, while also, representing what you want and what you need in a moment. And that advocacy is so important, and your care will improve when you are open about what you need during treatment, after treatment, at every point in which you're interacting with the healthcare system.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I think, particularly with melanoma, that, certainly I think we've all seen in these last few years, is that there's so much more hope now than there was, a decade ago. Because I remember when all of these, new treatments started coming out, and like when I still go to my support group and I'll share my story, and people like it's just so foreign to them because their experience with their treatment is so different. And I'm so grateful for that, that there are options. And a couple of like stage 4 survivors in my group, used to always say that, if there's something they want to do, let them do it, because the more time they can give you, the more time it gives the physicians and the researchers to find what's next. And I think that's been, that's kept me going a lot.
Excellent.
I would add too that, sorry, I would add as well, kind of to this question that, I don't think a lot of cancer patients realize how much they will get out of talking to other cancer patients until after they do it. And I know that was the case with me. And, that might be the other major thing I would tell someone who'd just been diagnosed, is that like, there are people out there like you, and you will probably get a lot out of talking to them. And if you seek out those relationships and those people, it will, I think you'll get something really positive from it.
Yep.
Definitely. I mean, that is kind of one of the reasons behind this whole series, is that you're not alone. right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I got out of Epic too, is you're not the only one who's, even if it's not the same kind of cancer, right? It's the same
Right.
cancer goggles or however you look at it. Well,
Right.
one last question, just as we close. I usually close by asking, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you guys would want to share? Either a tip, something you learned, anything, a funny story from a cancer. I usually just close that way in case there's anything that I specifically haven't asked you about. I'll let you share.
I'm gonna have to think about that one for a second.
Okay.
I would say, I mean, one thing I definitely learned is feel the feelings when you're having the feelings, whatever those feelings are. Like if you're happy, have a good day, go for a walk, do yoga, do whatever. If you're having a crappy day, take a nap, lie on the couch, put
Honestly.
covers over your head, talk to people, go for a ride, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I really felt like what got me through, particularly that first year, was allowing myself to feel all of the feelings, because I felt like the more I was stuffing things, the more stagnant I was.
Yeah. I think one thing I would say, and that's, is that to trust your instinct. If you feel like something is off, something's probably off. If you find, a lump or a bump, or you have this odd symptom, it's okay to go have it checked out. Do it. Better have it checked and then wait and it turn into something more. Trust your instinct.
Yeah.
I think I would encourage people to challenge the negative assumptions that they have about their life and about, what their future is going to be like. Easier said than done. And that's a hurdle for a lot of people. I know it was for me, but, sometimes you don't always know. Cancer's weird. It's a mutation. It is literally a mutation, and cells do not mutate predictably. And, and that many times the assumptions that you might draw from statistics or from studies, often I found the more I dug into them, the more I found hope that those statistics don't necessarily apply to me, or, there are plenty of reasons to think why I should be more hopeful than this paper might be telling me to be, or this doctor might be telling me to be. So just challenge those negative assumptions. Worst case scenario, they're right, and you'd be surprised how often they might turn out to be wrong.
Yeah. Excellent. You guys, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. If anyone who's watching has any other questions, you can contact Epic Experience. We can put those questions to these guys. But thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful evening. And if you're watching and you want to tune in 2 weeks, we will have another episode.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thanks,
have a
Gail.
wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Epic Experience was founded after my oldest son, Michael, was diagnosed with testicular cancer in 2007. I wanted to offer up hope to other cancer survivors so people know they're not alone, so that they know they can get out and start living again. It just may look different than how it did before they had cancer.
Epic Experience is unique in the fact that we really pride ourselves on trying to take anyone and everyone that we can. Doesn't matter when you were diagnosed. If you've been diagnosed 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, we don't put a timeline on it. We say that, if you've had cancer come into your life, we have a place for you.
Epic Experience. One word, it's epic. You have a chance to come up here and do some things that you've never probably done before.
This camp has taught me, why are you afraid? What's stopping you? I got out on the water in the pond here, and I'm I haven't done a headstand in a long time. And it's really difficult to do it on water. And I'm what am I afraid of?
At camp, it's about healing your soul and your spirit and living beyond that cancer diagnosis, having fun, being with people that understand, and really just embracing everything that life has to offer you.
They just said you were going to go to a camp, and I didn't even know where it was going to be. I got hauled up the mountain and got to play in the snow, and the thing that happened is I rediscovered joy, found myself again. Favorite memories from camp? Running down the hill in snowshoes. It's something I never really considered before.
I got on a sled today, and I'm going to be honest. I mean, I've beat cancer, but I was still nervous to get on a sled.
Well, kayaking is individual. You're all alone in your boat, and it's you versus the elements and how strong you are and getting through the challenges that are coming up, whether they're rapids or something in the water in the way. And with cancer, it's you versus your diagnosis.
Epic Experience is about empowering adult cancer survivors and thrivers beyond their cancer diagnosis. It's about giving them a community in which they feel that they have people they can connect with, that understand them, and walk their shoes to really know, hey, you know what? I'm not alone, and I have people with me, and it's so important for them to feel that connection.
Things that I used to worry about don't worry me as much anymore. Family is critically important. Friends and experiences is what life is about.
Well, I didn't think I needed this week, but I needed it more than I knew. I needed to just play in the snow. I needed to laugh until my sides hurt. I needed to connect with people, even though I didn't think I did. I needed to find out that I'm not alone in things I think I'm alone in.
So here at the 7W Ranch, not only are the activities that we do for the week amazing, but just the beautiful scenery around alone makes it just so incredible.
I was feeling a bit lost and unsure how to cope with life after cancer. I feel like Epic Experience brought me closer to who I used to be and who I want to be in the future.
Want me to cry when I talk about 7W? It's magic. Just say, it's special.
If you are debating on coming on this trip, just do it. Don't hesitate. I hesitated. I waited till the last minute, and I am so grateful that I came here.
This has been life-changing. This week has absolutely changed my life in ways that I couldn't have even imagined that it would.
Epic Experience is the right name for this experience. Trust, go for it.
Why can't you experience this? It's something that they've already been through, cancer treatments, whatever the therapy is, and this is another way to heal.
If you want to really check back in with yourself and find out where your inner person is and where your soul survives, come to a camp and just let it be.
Don't think about it. Don't wonder, should I? Just do it. Sign up for camp, and it'll be an amazing experience full of a lifetime of memories.